For 10 years now, Joyce Smith has been serving as a member of Parliament representing the Kildonan-St. Paul riding in Manitoba. She is our guest today and really instrumental in making a difference in the lives of young people, especially young women across this country. Joy, welcome. It's so good to have you with us. First of all, thank you for representing the country and thank you for being in the arena. It's a tough arena.
It's a tough arena, but it's a very worthwhile arena.
Well, something worthwhile that you are working on that's become a big part of your efforts in Ottawa is Bill C-36. And we want to hear from you, but allow me a moment just to read from something that came from your office just last week. Joyce Smith, Member of Parliament, was joined by survivors of human trafficking / forced prostitution and frontline organizations who work with victims to highlight the impact of Bill C-36 on women in prostitution. Bill C-36's targeting of pimps and johns is a significant leap forward for Canada. Survivors and frontline organizations have already expressed their appreciation of this new approach. Wow, this is heavy lifting, and you've been in the middle of it. Tell us about Bill C-36.
Well, I'm very proud of the government's bill C-36, and I'll tell you why. It's a first in Canada. Prostitution has been legal in this country. A lot of people are not aware of that. For the first time, we make the buying of sex illegal. We target the predators. We're trying to dry up the market. The other thing, it's a compassionate bill. There has never been a bill that has reflected compassion on the victims. When I talk about the victims of human trafficking and those in prostitution, there's a gray area there because often predators target the victims, they force them into, they lure them into prostitution, and once these young girls and young boys service men or women in that manner, they lose something. They lose their dignity, they lose their self-worth. They get shot up with drugs, all these things happen, all the bad things. So Canada now, because of the Bedford case last Christmas, came down and said that all the laws around prostitution are unconstitutional. But they wisely gave 12 months for the government to respond to what they had declared. And Bill C-36 is that response.
So you went after those that are really the profiteers, those that are making the money and are really holding in bondage young people, for the most part, who are victims and themselves coming out of very difficult and precarious situations. There's a lot of compassion in this bill that I think Canadians would be quite pleased with, and obviously your colleagues have been pleased with.
Well, a lot of the colleagues are. What's happening right now, the bill is going to committee the week of July the 7th. But what people don't realize, there's big money behind human trafficking and prostitution. Predators make between $260,000 to $280,000 per victim per year. And what they do, it's a very under-the-radar kind of clandestine crime, because how they work with their victims is to become their friends. They give them anything they want. And then suddenly the boyfriend, whoever it is, suddenly the victim owes the money. And how can they pay it off? By dancing, by going into inappropriate prostitution practices. It takes away their whole lives. So Bill C-36 has recognized that a lot of these are victims. There's a small part of them, maybe 2%, whatever. You know, we've just seen Michelle and Jay Brock's film on Red Light, Green Light. Wonderful film. It tells the story. I've known Michelle and Jay for a very long time. It's excellent. And basically, it speaks to what is Canada all about? What do we want for Canada? Well, most of the communities do not want the sex trade as one of the industries. Can you imagine to get EI if somebody was out of job and there was an open brothel down the street? What would prevent you know, them from saying, well, there's a job opening at the local brothel, you're on EI, why don't you take it? If it becomes an industry, if this bill doesn't go through, we will have everything legal as of December 2014. Is that the Christmas present you want to give to your children? That's what we as Christians across this country have to ask ourselves. That's how important it is.
We're talking with Joyce Smith, who is a member of Parliament from the Kildonan-St. Paul riding in Manitoba. And listening to her and watching to her, it's so encouraging to know that you are there and that your colleagues are there with compassion and concern. Mm-hmm. You obviously have a great love for our Lord. Yes. And a great love for this country. A little bit behind the scenes on this. Politics is what it is, and there are times where there have to be agreements or compromises made. But what I find so striking about this is that you have gone into an area where oftentimes it's just, these are sensitive subjects. Even the words we use, it's dark, it's seedy, and we don't want to go there. And yet you have found a way to be able to bring this issue and shine light upon it. And I think all of us would applaud you that you have lit a candle and you have taken into some of the darkest corners of this land. Any kind of substantial resistance to this as you've been, are there organized efforts that have said, we've got to stop this Joyce Smith and her colleagues?
Oh, yes.
Really?
There's two sides. The one side is legalization. Mm-hmm. They say, you know, you legalize everything, the women will be safer. Well, anyone who's ever worked with victims of human trafficking who have been exploited know this is not true. The behind-the-scenes story is very brutal. And, you know, I did bring some survivors out, and they told their story. They were very compelling because this is the real story. The other side is some very self-righteous people who feel like for their own good, you should arrest the victims. Mm-hmm. I mean, there are some cases where they need to be told to move on, like in front of schools or places like that. But the whole goal should be to give them opportunity to get out of prostitution or the traffic situation. And there's $20 million attached to that bill for the victims to exit programs.
To try to help them transition into a better way of life.
Absolutely.
Which again, I think demonstrates great compassion.
It is great compassion.
It's just not just cursing the darkness, but it's also saying, here's an opportunity to lift your life.
But you know what? Targeting the Johns and the pimps is a really good thing. Yeah. Because, you know, the Johns I've met really don't want their pictures in the front page of the paper. Right. And they don't want their wives to know. I've had Johns that I've met, the corner of Higgins and Main in my city, and you see their vans and the baby seats in the back, and they service themselves with a 14 or 15-year-old, and then they go home Friday night and watch the football game with their own daughters, 14 and 15 years old. And we have to get through the fact this is not Canada's oldest profession. It's Canada's oldest oppression and violence against women and children. Oppression
is really the word. And you're going after the oppressors, the ones who are creating hell on earth for the victims.
Right.
Our conversation is going to continue on Crossroads 360. I want you to know more about this very courageous leader in this country. I also want to encourage you not only to visit Crossroads 360 for our continued conversation, but this member of Parliament would like for you to really get behind this bill, Bill C-36. So here's what I'd like to encourage you to do. If you'll go to 100huntley.com, 100huntley.com will provide for you information as to how you can respond and how you can let officials know in Ottawa and all across the land that you are behind Bill C-36. It'll tell you how to engage, how to respond, and how you can be a difference maker in this country. I do want you to stay tuned and join us on Crossroads 360 for more of this conversation. But for this segment, Joy, what a privilege to meet you, and thank you so much for being an ambassador for our Lord and for this nation.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. And we'll be back in just a moment.